And speaking of bad news, hate to give you more, but apparently this happened. The FBI sent a plane to Cuba to stop a trans kid from accessing gender-affirming care. Now, I'm just looking at the title. I have not read the details of the article, but that is enough to raise some alarm bells. And let's hope that it's just a clickbaity title, and this isn't actually the FBI spending our tax dollars to hurt children. You know, ignoring the bombing of children we did. The FBI sent a government plane to Cuba to prevent a transgender parent from providing her child with gender-affirming care. According to court filings first reported by the New York Times, federal authorities took the unusual step as part of an international parental kidnapping investigation stemming from a custody dispute. Okay? The FBI believes that Rose Inessa Ethington, a transgender woman, brought her 10-year-old child from a previous relationship to Cuba to undergo gender-affirming medical care, which authorities characterize in filings as potential transition-related treatment, over the objections of the child's cisgender mother. Okay? I like that they're not giving any details on what that gender-affirming care is, because, you know, if the kid's under 12, then the most you can do is give them a fucking dress. Like, that's kind of what we do. If the kid's over 12 or has undergone puberty, then we start using puberty blockers at that point, and we have about 5 years where we can use those. After the puberty blockers, then HRT is happening, but at that point, that's when you're 16 to 18, and, you know, that's the age where we let people drive cars. So I'm sorry, if you're allowed to drive a steel death machine and risk everybody else's lives on the highway, I think it's okay for you to make a decision about your own fucking body at that point. The U.S. Department of Justice on April 21st announced the child had been reunited with her cisgender mother. We are grateful to law enforcement for working swiftly to return the child to the biological mother, said Utah Assistant Attorney Melissa Hollick. A federal complaint filed in Utah courts shows the FBI's Violent Crimes Against Children unit in Salt Lake City investigated Inessa Ethington and her current partner, Blue Inessa Ethington. The child, according to the complaint, was assigned male at birth but identifies as female and has been splitting time between Rose and the child's cisgender mother under an existing custody agreement. The complaint alleges that Rose claims to be taking the child on a camping trip to Canada, but instead traveled to Cuba and then ceased communications with the child's cisgender mother after March 28th. The child was supposed to be returned to the other biological parent on April 3rd. State courts in Utah on April 13th ordered the child be returned and awarded sole custody to her cisgender mother. The Justice Department on April 21st announced the child had been reunited with her mother and that Rose and Blue Inessa face charges of international parental kidnapping under federal law. Okay, so do we actually have any evidence that this kid was going to be given the snip or some shit? Like, do we have any of that? Or is that just one paranoid parent? There is an argument to be made in the cisgender parents' benefit. When you have dual custody, the laws around that are very, very strict. Once you agree to those terms, violating those terms can cause you to lose access to your child. So it feels a little ill-informed as a parent to try to do things that would change the likelihood of you being able to keep your kid. If you, as the trans parent, recognize that you want your kid to have access to you as a parent, and you want them to know that it's okay for them to be trans if that is what they are, then doing things to risk that feels silly. Tal says on Fox News they were saying that a biological male partner kidnapped a 10-year-old child to Cuba for a sex change. Well, if it's Fox News, they're going to give the most inflammatory version of this. Always. President Trump, at the start of his second term, issued an executive order banning gender-affirming care for minors. While federal courts have blocked enforcement of the policy, the government's response in this case suggests federal authorities are still pursuing an aggressive intervention in disputes involving such care. The episode comes amid a broader clash between medical evidence and political action on transgender care. In Utah, for example, Republican lawmakers have continued to restrict access to gender-affirming care for minors, even commissioning a comprehensive state report that found such treatments improve mental health outcomes and reduce suicide risk among transgender youth. Again, Republicans do not make laws to protect children. In Tennessee, they actually make laws so that they can fuck them. So, here we are. Oh, and if anybody wants evidence of that particular claim, in Tennessee, a Republican lawmaker tried to get a law passed that created a special kind of marriage that only opposite-sex couples would have access to, so that they could then say that the previous version of marriage had been, not good, it's been desecrated, whatever. But in the new version of the marriage laws, they did not put an age limit, which means you could get married at fucking 11 so long as one of your parents thought that that was a responsible thing to do. Now, when pressed about that law, that lawmaker went, yeah, I know this law allows for that. Completely straight-faced. It's clown world shit. Okay, let's get back to this story about the train. If you're on YouTube, you might not have known because I'd cut it, but I had to go out, grab pizza, and then we had a whole thing about gloves in fast food restaurants and stuff. So it was a fun time. Go check out Suris live, or, go to my Twitch. Anyway, so this episode comes amid a broader clash between medical evidence and political action on transgender care. In Utah, Republican lawmakers have continued to restrict access to gender-affirming care, commissioning a comprehensive state report that found that such treatments improve mental health outcomes and reduce suicide risks among transgender youth. They decided that they wanted to fund the research that had already been done again, and it came to the same conclusion as last time. It ain't no cast report. The disconnect has become emblematic of a wider national debate in which policymakers have moved forward with bans and restrictions despite research they themselves sought out. In the case, a complaint filed by U.S. attorneys cites concerns from one side of the child's family that she only identifies as female because of manipulation by Rose Inessa Ethington. The complaint says Blue Inessa Ethington withdrew $10,000 before the planned family vacation and did not return to work as expected in April. Law enforcement ultimately determined the couple had traveled to Cuba with the child. Authorities believed the family did not plan to return to the U.S. Experts told the New York Times it was highly unusual for the federal government to dispatch an official plane to intervene in a custody dispute. Jay Groob says this is bizarre and highly unusual. I've never heard of this happening. The authorities say the priority is simply the child's safety. I'm going to call bullshit on that. So, again, there is a line where you do have to be able to give custody back to a person when you're in dual custody. You need to be able to hand the child back off. And if we're talking about gender-affirming care, the child is not going to have anything one and done. An HRT prescription would be just that, a prescription, and they would have to be on it for years before a surgery would happen. And going and getting gender-affirming care down south, depending on the age of the child, we're talking about them getting a supply of puberty blockers. That's about it. I don't know if there's necessarily evidence of that based on the information provided and what I know about gender-affirming care, because generally speaking, with gender-affirming care, it's not, let's go ahead and cut up your chest, let's go ahead and give you the boobies, let's go ahead and give you phalloplasty. That's usually not what's happening. Almost every medical expert that knows anything about those things is going to tell you that you need to be on HRT for an amount of time before you can do those things, because your body is not going to be able to operate correctly once the HRT has taken hold if it doesn't have the things to redistribute like they have to. Imagine this, you get your body surgically altered, and then you start taking HRT, and then your body starts trying to redistribute fat into the new areas of the body, and there's nothing for it to do that with, and then boobs that you might have had naturally now suddenly aren't actually forming. Or, again, they could be misshapen or any number of things when they are forming, if they had already done implants. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong in this situation. So, I don't know if it's true that the parents were fleeing to Cuba for gender-affirming care specifically, because gender-affirming care tends to be a very long, arduous, and ongoing thing. I think more than likely the reason that the plane was sent was to make an example of the parent here. Make an example of the parent, show that the administration isn't fucking around, and then have Fox News report on it in favor of the admin. They said, our priority in every parental kidnapping case is the safety and well-being of the child. This case reflects the strength of partnerships in locating victims, supporting reunification, and ensuring accountability. Cyberchill says, one big issue that I've got when I've looked into transitioning is it's going to be hell on my bipolar, and it will be hell finding a doctor and insurance to cover it. So I will say this from experience. The first insurance that we got, the doctor did not know a whole lot about trans people, the one that we got as primary care, and there weren't a whole lot of people who were experts on it in the staff. The next year, we got insurance through Kaiser Permanente instead, and they actually have a designated trans care set of staff. I don't know if that's available in your area, but the statement, it will be hell to find a doctor and insurance that will cover it, is only as true as your options are available. In our case, we have a very good option available that is local to us, and I am super thankful for that. I don't know if that will be the case for you. As for the bipolar thing, I mean, yeah, think about the mood swings of a teenager. You're doing that to yourself again, so like, the likelihood of that messing with your bipolar is high, but the question is, how many other areas of your mental health are suffering as a result of not doing the transition? You can come up with a billion reasons to not engage in an action if you have already determined the action is the one you want to do, because it is easier to engage in an action. I don't want to push you in any one way. I don't know your story. I don't know what's going on in your head. I know none of those things. I just know from experience that human beings are really good at not doing things. And we find a billion reasons to not do things. We're very good at it. So I want to go ahead and see here specifically how this is being reported by, like, Fox. I am curious. Actually, wait, NPR? NPR tends to be fairly good. I want to see how they're doing this. So I certainly want to do so. It's just an uphill battle. Right, but it's going to be an uphill battle no matter what choice you make. So you may as well make the choice that's going to make you happy. If every road leads to a struggle, you may as well take the road that lets you smile through it. Interesting. The charges don't actually say if the couple actually planned on getting the child gender-affirming surgery in Cuba, or how they would even get it, because that surgery isn't even legal for children in Cuba. Wow. That's hilarious. Okay. The FBI said that Blue and Essa Ethington withdrew $10,000 from her checking account before leaving. Agents also found at their home a note with instructions from a mental health therapist in Washington, D.C. to send a therapist the $10,000 and instructions on gender-affirming medical care for children, but the note didn't mention Cuba. A note with instructions from a mental health therapist in Washington, D.C. to send the therapist the $10,000 and instructions on gender-affirming medical care in children. Interesting. That bit of the story was not reported in the other one, but that also sounds very much like a everybody clapped kind of story. Because why would they be in Cuba if Cuba doesn't, if that surgery is illegal there? What would be the benefit of it? Search began after the trial wasn't returned as scheduled. That part we understand. Again, there's a fine line you walk. There's a very, very fine line you walk when you are dealing with kids in dual custody. Bevan said they just had a concern about it. No actual physical evidence. Logan Police spokesperson Sergeant Brandon Bevan said that the concerns were raised by a family member, but he declined to say who. That's standard procedure usually, protecting identities. A Utah state judge ordered the return of the 10-year-old to the child's mother on April 13th. 3 days later, a federal magistrate judge issued an arrest warrant for Anessa Ethingtons. On the same day, Cuban law enforcement located the group. They were deported to the U.S. aboard the government plane Monday and arraigned in federal court in Richmond, Virginia. The 10-year-old was returned to the biological mother. First Assistant U.S. Attorneys Melissa Holick in Utah indicated in a statement. Representatives of the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office declined to say what happened to the 3-year-old child who had been with the group. 3-year-old child. 3-year-old child. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So, at 3 years old, I don't know if you can say your child is trans. I know that there's plenty of trans people that have, that have stories where they found out their identity at 4, at 5, at 6, very early times, but at 3, I don't know how much of a sense of self you have, actually. That moves things in a weird direction. Riddle says, is there another child involved? They found a pamphlet. Does the person have another child? Breakman says, it looks like Sved's family member called the authorities on the parent because the parent is trans and just wanted to make their lives hell. Agreed. That I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree that a family member likely narked on them because transphobia. Sure. But looking at the evidence that is available here, the evidence that was reported by NPR, because there's a little more context given, the child's 3. So there are no surgeries that could be done at this point. That finding a doctor that would be willing to do that would be strange. So it seems like they just are upset that the child was not returned to the other part of dual custody earlier. That smells like there is information missing here. That smells like there is infinitely more information that we do not have in this scenario. Now let's go ahead and see what's going on with the custody dispute. The custody dispute between the parents does not appear to be a new development. An online fundraiser created 5 years ago by Blue Vanessa, titled Help a Trans Mother Keep Custody of Her Child. Wait, 5 years ago? 5 years? Oh, the 10-year-old. Okay, 10-year-old, and there was a 3-year-old in the group as well. Okay. I misread things. I can't fucking read. The child they think was transitioning was 10. And there was a 3-year-old child in the group as well. I amend my statement. That could potentially be a trans child. I don't know. The custody dispute is not new. An online fundraiser created 5 years ago was entitled Help a Trans Mother Keep Custody of Her Child. Last week, Rose's ex relocated several counties away, negatively impacting Rose's parent time with the child. She wrote on the fundraising page, she said the money would be used to seek a court order that would keep the child safe and stable throughout the process. Anybody who has spent time with Rose knows how much care and thought she puts into parenting her gender-open child. The family members said the child was assigned male at birth but identifies as a girl because of what they believe to be manipulation by Rose, according to an April 16th affidavit from the FBI Special Agent Jennifer Waterfield. Okay. Bregman says not even the 10-year-old will be doing anything other than changing clothes. Exactly. So I think that the argument that they're trying to whisk away with the kid in order to have them get their bits cut off doesn't actually track, because at that age, that is not what any medical expert is arguing to do. The only exception might be if a kid is intersex, because there is a very strong record of doctors deciding arbitrarily which thing they believe, which genitalia they believe that the child should have, and it is a gamble. Sometimes they end up sewing up a vaguboo, and then the child develops exclusively female, and then suddenly they are very confused about why everything is wrong with their body, or the other way around. So, horror stories. Body horror stories. Is there any other information on here? So that we gained some new info from this from NPR. It's the 23rd. This was reported on the 22nd. I wonder if there's any other info that we are missing. Here's all the articles from them. We already covered the one from them. We know that they omitted information that would have actually been fairly useful in still coming to a conclusion that was in the favor of the transparent. So let's see what's going on here. Advocate. What do they have to say here? Government plane set to Cuba. Federal complaint, U.S. courts. Complaint alleges Rose claimed to be taking the child on a camping trip to Canada, but instead traveled to Cuba. Again, that was a fucking mistake. Why did you do that? And then ceased communication with the child's birth mother after March 28th. The child was supposed to be returned to the other biological parent on April 3rd. Again, dual custody. I don't think that they were trying to trans the kid. I think that the argument they were trying to trans the kid was used as the fire to turn this into a bigger scenario than it was. Said, who's the kid with the other parent? Don't know. That information's not there. Cyberchill says, you can certainly claim so, but there isn't anything to do but allow them to dress/present as they wish. Whatever they decide they do that day because they are 3. I'm not sure how I stand on tween teens other than it's up to the child, their legal guardian, and their doctors. So I don't have to give my opinion on what I think you should do with teens who claim to be trans. I don't have to give my opinion because I just have to point to what medical experts say to do. And that is that we can use hormone blockers to buy them time. And then they can be on HRT if they decide, after being on hormone blockers for a pretty extensive amount of time, that they wish to do so. I don't have to say that's my opinion. I can just say my opinion aligns with what current medical expertise is. As opposed to common sense, which isn't a thing. Bragwin says, said family member is trying, whether intending or not, to get that child's parent killed. If they aren't intending it, then wouldn't that imply they're not trying it? Just, maybe I'm being a little bit of a pedant there. But, like, it seems that the actual issue here is that a child who is supposed to be in dual custody, and the dual custody was violated based on the information provided. There could be more information that leans this further in the cis parents courthouse, and there is information that could lean this further in the trans parents courthouse. I don't know. Based on the information provided, this dispute has the fuck all nothing to do with the kid being trans. There seems to be very little evidence of that other than the supposed note, but I wonder if the note is mentioned anywhere else. Advocate is not noting that the note was a thing. Okay. So what about Fox News? Because that's a point of evidence in favor of them trying to trans a child, even though that's not what would be happening at that point. So let's see what Fox News says about it, because that's Fox 59, not Fox News. Surely Fox News would be going over this one. What? Far-left activist stays in 5-star Cuban hotel as island suffers total blackout. Is that about Hassan? Is that just about Hassan? I think it's Hassan. It's Hassan. Okay. I've stopped caring. Cyberchill says, so do the parents try to take their kid out of the U.S. in defiance of dual custody and the media is spinning it against them for being trans? That seems to be what is happening. Based on the information available in this case, that seems to be what has happened. That's February 2nd. I'm confused. Surely Fox News would have jumped on this. Am I dumb? Webmate says, someone said Fox did cover it. Yeah, I don't doubt that they covered it. I just think it's weird that I can't find it. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Fuck off. I don't want your ads. Die in a fire, Rupert Murdoch. The world would be a better place without you. Okay, and then, of course, when I did that, allowing the ads on the page suddenly made it to where the entire page got translated back to a different language. Fuck off. Just gonna paste the whole fucking thing here. Nope, text exceeds the limits. That if only one outlet is reporting on the note, I think the detail may not be that credible. Right, but the one outlet that's doing it is NPR. Right? The one outlet that's doing it is one of the more trustworthy outlets, so it needs to be taken into account. All right. Let's try this then. Text exceeds the limit, that's fine. Case in Utah garnered international attention. Federal authorities... The couple took the boy across... Okay, so the misgendering the child. Took the boy across several international borders without his mother knowledge or court authorization. An action that now lies at the center of a federal case involving international parent abduction. Again, that's what I mentioned. Biden is mentioned in this article. It's Fox News, of course. They have to talk about Biden. Biden granted protected status to a Honduran national who was subsequently accused of raping and torturing his niece. Okay, I see. That's a link. That is a link. That would have been a really weird detail to just shove in there randomly. Bryden granted protective status to a Honduran national who was subsequently accused of raping and torturing his niece. And we have a president who did the same thing. I don't fucking care. I feel terrible for the things that has happened to the child, but my God, you have egg on your face. Your favorite president is actually a rapist. Get over yourself. The pair was located in Cuba with the assistance of the FBI, returned to the United States. Okay, let's see if I can't find anything about the note. Because again, surely Fox News would report on the note. At least that's what I would think. According to a federal criminal complaint, the journey began on March 28th when the child departed on what the mother believed to be a camping trip in Calgary. The following day, the group crossed into Canada on foot via the Peace Arch border, crossing in Washington State, but they never checked into their hotel or campsite, according to the U.S. Attorney in the District of Utah. The Peach Arch border crossing into Washington, where the suspects in the Utah kidnapping entered Canada. Several vehicles prepared to enter the U.S. from Canada via the Peace Arch border crossing. Authorities said they quickly changed their strategy. Court documents outline a route spanning several countries. They flew from Vancouver to Mexico City, then traveled to Merida before taking another flight to Havana, Cuba on April 1st. Mexican immigration authorities subsequently confirmed the group's movements, noting that they were traveling on U.S. passports. Okay. Anything else here? Investigators assert the trip does not appear to have been spontaneous in the slightest. According to the complaint, searches conducted at the couple's residence revealed detailed planning notes, which included references to learning Spanish, obtaining travel documents, and making preparations for an extended journey. One of the defendants withdrew $10,000 in cash just days before the trip, and other notes referenced banking transactions, storage arrangements, and logistical aspects of the journey. So none of this seems to have anything to do with them being trans. None of it has to do with the kid being forced to transition at all. It doesn't mean the parents aren't in a bad situation, but there is another angle that I'm not looking at, actually. This doesn't make it right, legally speaking, but if the other parent for dual custody has been very, very bad towards the kid, especially because they are gender non-conforming, then the other parents trying to basically flee the country to protect their child seems like that would make sense. If I were to steel man the trans parent in this scenario, in full transparency, that's the way that I would look at that if I was fully steel manning their position, but that is me making assumptions about the other parent. I don't know. I am operating under the assumption of one parent being bad and one parent being good in this scenario, which could be very reductive, and I could have the people wrong, actually. So this mentions the note. So the note is mentioned on Fox News, like I thought. The note and more information about the note, talking about learning Spanish, making preparations for an extended journey. Yeah, that is information that NPR did not report on. I'm hoping that that is factual information. In Utah, the boy's mother waited. The last she heard from him was March 18th when he told her that the group had arrived safely in Canada. I love how, okay, so do you notice this particular thing? It refuses to say child. Now, I don't know how this particular one is worded in the English version of the Fox News article, if they say the child, but it's really interesting that they are repeatedly saying the boy, the boy, the boy, instead of saying the child, because the child seems like it would be a little less clunky for this, but that seems to be a very, very deliberate choice. But again, if I don't know what the article looks like in the English version. I'm translating a different one. According to the court documents, both adults turned off their phones after March 28th, cutting off call communication, while the boy had no way to contact his family on his own. You could just say the child. It feels like it would be less clunky. That looks like information that does not bode well for the trans parents. According to court documents, family members expressed deep concern for the child's well-being. Some relatives believe the child, born male but who identifies as female, have been influenced by Rose. That's the bit that was reported everywhere else. Let's see here. Tess Davis, the attorney representing the child's biological mother, told the New York Times that the issue of gender-related medical treatment had been a constant point of contention during the parents' divorce. Right, so one parent is trans, does actual research into things, sees that they should let the child explore things and that will be healthier and their chance of suicide goes down, and the other parents decided that they would prefer to not be that way and to not use facts and data. And now we're here, where one parent seems like they have felt like they are forced to flee the country with their kid, which feels ill-advised? Definitely ill-advised. Fennec says, in the original, is in Spanish, it's a pretty gendered language, so probably why boy is being used instead of child. Yeah, like I said, that it could be the case easily, because we're talking about a website that is... I'm not looking at the English version. I don't think he imagined that Rose was capable of doing something like that until it was already too late. Davis told the outlet he was worried about... he would never see his daughter again. He was worried. He was... Wait, but the other one is a cis female. What? Weird shit. Weird shit. On April 13th, the Utah court granted the mother sole custody and ordered the immediate return of the child. Hold on. Am I missing a piece of this? I could be missing a piece of this. Let's find out here. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba. Do-do-do-do-do. I don't think she imagined Rose was capable of doing something like this until it was already too late. Davis told the outlet she was worried about never being able to see her daughter again. Okay, there we go. It changed the fucking gender. It changed the gender when I translated it differently. Okay. Tal says Fox News kept saying biological male and father and son. Okay, so yeah, Fox News has no respect for trans people. Again, this seems to be a scenario where the parents made a bad decision, and that decision was doing what legally would be considered kidnapping. And now, any protections that they might have wanted to have for their child now simply are thrown to the wind, and now the child is going to be with the cis parent, and the cis parent can continue to try to indoctrinate the kid against the other parent. An FBI agent wrote in the complaint that the level of planning suggested the couple intended to leave the country with the child and not return. We thank law enforcement for their swift action, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, again. Okay, so looking at how every side is reporting this now, the sides that are omitting information, which information they are choosing to omit, and why. I think the TLDR here is cis parent, trans parent. Trans parent wants what they believe is best for their child. Cis parent wants what they believe is best for their child. Trans parent believes letting the child explore gender is good. Cis parent believes that it is not. Trans parent has already had to fight for custody for their kid once and had to raise money to try to get the resources to maintain custody of their child once. So there is a history of this child being a tug of war between the two. 5 years pass, and the trans parent concocts a plan with therapists or others to leave the country with the child because they believe that the other parent likely is a bad influence on the child, a belief that the other parent believes of the other parent. They try to flee the country and then get caught because that is legally kidnapping. No part of this has to do with transing the child. Every part of this has to do with simply allowing the child to explore their gender identity. I am in the camp of the trans parent up to the point where they want what's best for their kid and have been willing to go to any lengths to do that. I struggle when we are talking about dual custody, because once you violate the dual custody, that's where you're at. Like, you've now violated dual custody. The government's not going to be very kind to you there. And it feels like if you're, like I said before, the last part of the TLDR is if your goal was to do what is best for the child, you have now engineered a scenario where you will be less present in the child's life. So now the thing that is best for the child is no longer there. Best of intentions, cut off nose to spite face. That's the steel man of the situation. Now, if it is more insidious than that, I don't know. Not based on what I'm looking at, I don't know. But it does seem to be a one parent cut off their nose to spite her face. in an effort to protect the child, and did so in a way that was very, very illegal. That's what it looks like to me. I wonder what the conversation about this is looking like online. Yeah, so just quickly, just searching plain Blue Sky, plain FBI on Blue Sky, I can see some posts about the situation, and this one basically sums up where I'm at. And that is that textbook definition of kidnapping, you kind of did that, and the story is being dishonestly framed by Fox News and others to say that the child was being sent to Cuba to get gender-affirming care, when that's not a thing they could have gotten in Cuba in the first place. So that's kind of where I'm at. TLDR. Best of intentions, nose cut off face. Seems to be where we're at. If somebody has more information on this that I am missing, if there is something that I do not have access to, let me know in the comment section below so that I can have a more accurate read of what's going on here, because I feel like this is going to be used as a torch for the right wing for the next few months to come. And it may be a good idea for us to have all the information we possibly can have in order to prevent this from being a really useful tool in their hands. Be accurate, don't be like them. Okay. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.